Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to The Antidote. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your boy, Ryan Burden. This is your weekly wellness check. Let's make sure that these folks over on IG can join us. There they are. There they are. Once again, welcome to The Antidote. This is your weekly wellness check. That's what we're going to call it. Every week on The Antidote, we analyze current events, the most pressing issues going on in the world, and we use Dr. Barbara Love's framework of a liberatory consciousness to look for ways that we can move our society and our world closer towards justice, closer towards liberation, closer towards connection and community. And Dr. Love's framework includes four crucial elements: awareness, analysis, action, and accountability. And so we're gonna apply that frame to the most current events, the most pressing issues, the most exciting conversations. And this week we are going to be talking about the story that just keeps on giving. This is Shiloh Hendrix. We're going to talk all about that. There's all kinds of layers to that, and it's super, super important that particularly us as white folks are talking about this. Then we're going to go into the acquittal of the cops who were involved, three of the cops who were involved in killing Tyree Nichols in 2023 in Memphis. Some folks are pointing at that and saying, see, police brutality and policing isn't about race. I'm going to say pump your brakes on that, but we're going to get to that. We are also going to go deep into the Rodney Hinton Jr. Situation. He's the man in Cincinnati, the father in Cincinnati who ran over a retired deputy, after he saw the body cam footage of Cincinnati police shooting and killing his son. So we are going to dive into all of that. We're going to give it a couple minutes for folks to jump on here. When you're on, thank you so much for joining us, whether you're joining live, whether you're watching this after the fact, if it's Friday morning, if it's over the weekend, if it's early next week. Every single view matters. Every single like, every single subscription. Thank you. I'm really trying to take this more seriously instead of, just getting on here and talking my stuff. I really want to structure and organize it and create a space and a community where we can have these conversations. And that doesn't happen without you. And so please, if you're watching this, send this to a friend, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It really, really matters. And so thank you in advance. I really appreciate it. Of course, if you're watching live, go ahead and jump in the comments. We'd love to interact. We usually save some time at the end for questions. And tonight will be no different. I am looking forward to that, hearing your thoughts on what we've been talking about here. Let me check in. What's up, Zoe? Listen, it's a beautiful thing when your daughter jumps on and your daughter can hear everything you're talking about. And so I really appreciate that. That's special to have your daughter here. I didn't get a chance to teach my kids. But I guess I am now. So what's up, Zozo Bear? Before we jump into the heavy stuff though, y'all will notice I got my Timberwolves hat on. I don't know what happened last game. I think it was just the rust, but game 2 of round 2 of the NBA playoffs is tonight. I'm gonna try to get out of here in enough time to catch at least some of the first quarter and go Wolves. I think without Steph, we got a pretty good shot. Wild to see what the Knicks are doing. That is wild, man. I love to see it though. Starting to look like that Cat Julius Randle trade is working out for both teams. So shout out to the Knicks. Shout out to Knicks fans. I know, that's kind of a story of agony. Being Irish, I don't take a lot of joy in Boston losing. And I think the Jason Tatum hate is uncalled for. Oh, excuse me. But I love to see the Knicks doing well. I love to see Indiana. Handing it to Cleveland. I don't know why exactly, but I just love that. So we are here. All right. So if you're joining live, jump in the comments. Let us know where you're at. Ask your questions. Do what you need to do. That goes for those folks over on Instagram as well. Jump in the comments and we will interact. This is supposed to be dialogical. I like to go back and forth, but we're going to go ahead and get started, and we are going to jump in with this Shiloh Hendrix nonsense. Shiloh Hendrix nonsense. Shiloh Hendrix, if you don't know, which I don't know where you've been if you don't know, she is the white woman from Rochester, Minnesota, who was caught on tape racially abusing, verbally abusing a black 5-year-old child with autism. And the tape, the video starts with a bystander being like, "Did you just call that young boy the N-word?" And she repeats it. She cusses at him, and she accuses this 5-year-old of stealing something from her kid. Now, your antenna should go up when you hear 5-year-olds stealing stuff. That's 5-year-olds don't steal stuff, right? 5-year-olds learn social boundaries, and they need to be parented, and they need to be taught, but they don't steal stuff. There's no ill intent there. He's doing what 5-year-olds do, if indeed that even happened, right? I'm not sure it happened. Maybe it did. That doesn't matter. There's no reason to act the way that she acted. And so she was put on the internet, and the internet did what the internet does, and I am here for all of that. And she did what folks who get put on blast on the internet do. She jumped on Give, Send, Go, which is gaining a lot of publicity right now as well, because they seem to be okay with hate speech and funding it and all that. So she jumped on Give, Send, Go, and white nationalists rallied to it, right? And a big part of why they rallied to it is because she doesn't deny doing it. She does not deny doing it. In the Give, Send, Go, she says, "I called him the N-word because that's how he was acting." And she says it in the video as well, right? And so this brazen white nationalist, this brazen racist, is leaning into the move right now for white nationalists across the country, is to really, really double down on the idea that this is a white country. I can be racist. Explicit racism is 100% acceptable at this time, and here we go. Let's get it, right? And some folks are like, "Yo, that can't possibly be what it is." Other folks are donating money, and she has raised over $600,000, right? And she did that in large part because other white nationalists recognized the opportunity to go support one of their own. And nobody more famous than Lily Gaddis. And so she jumped on Twitter, X, whatever, and she had this to say. And let me go ahead and present this. This is Lily Gaddis in her own words. Bam.
Shiloh Hendrix going viral on the internet right now. She told a kid who, by the way, when you actually look at the picture, the kid is like pretty decent sized child. He was rummaging through her bag and stealing
pretty
her
decent sized child,
I guess, toys or whatever out of her bag. She tells him to fuck off, essentially, which when you look at the video, the guy filming the video, he's a Somali Hassan, whatever. He's a pedophile, actually. He's going to court in a little bit for raping an underage girl after offering her a place to stay.
I want to pause here. This is important. That's not true. She's blatantly lying. That is not true. He has no criminal record. He is not going to court. He is not a pedophile. He was there with his own son. And so I want to make sure the record reflects that. Let's continue by all means, racist.
Stay. So that's your great people. And this is just like, this is whites having enough of it. We're sick of being bullied in our own country. You have this guy. He's not even from here. He's got a fucking accent. He's a convicted pedophile in a playground in a park. So what are you doing there anyway? He's swarming the streets, and now he's trying to get her life ruined. He's like, "Oh, this is hate speech. There will be consequences."
Swarming the streets.
I'm sorry. This is America. You have free speech in this country. So go and support her. She's got like a Gifts and Go up. But this is great. This is white people finally being fed up with this shit. And the fact that we have brown people trying to take away white people's rights in a white country when we have the Constitution and freedom of speech, and they come from their shit countries where you can be locked up for hate speech. This is just disgusting. This is everything wrong with immigrants. This is everything wrong with brown people in our fucking country. And this is why we need to kick them all out, because they not only come to our country and rape our children, but they also come to our country and try to impose their third world religion and their third world laws.
She thinks she's clever with that.
This is white people's country. This is a white country for white people. These people are not welcome. And I'm glad to see people are finally standing up. So stand with her. And everybody's trying to, shit on her and spin the narrative and ruin her life. But if you can give some to her, because W mom of the year, and show some hate to him as well.
All right, y'all. Here we go. Well, she told a little bit of the truth. It is disgusting. The wrong thing is disgusting, right? Her whole rant, this whole thing is disgusting. Let's get that out of the way. But there's more there that we should talk about, right? So one, we're aware that this happened. And again, on the antidote, we look for awareness, analysis, action, and accountability. So let's really dive into that, right? So let's develop an analysis. You can hear Lily Gaddis on there. And just so you know, she has like 265,000 X followers. She has a pretty huge platform. Bill Maher shot her out. I'm going to talk about her appearance on Piers Morgan because that's actually where I first saw her, or learned her name, I should say. I saw her post. I saw that post previous, but I learned her name at that point in time. But it's important, right? I think we need to understand that the idea that this is a white country is fundamental to Trumpism. It's fundamental to white nationalists. It's fundamental to MAGA. And there's multiple reasons why that is. For some folks, they're the ops. They're violent. They really truly believe in white supremacy. And for other folks, they're desperately searching for a community, right? And I'm gonna talk a little bit about that in a little bit, right? But the fact that that's 100% wrong and antithetical to the values ostensibly put forth in the Declaration of Independence and the principles that the country is founded on seems not to matter to these folks, right? And so you can ask them questions about who actually created the country, who is the country made for. Ask them about the indigenous people that were on Turtle Island before Europeans got here, and you'll get all kinds of gobbledygook. You'll get all kinds of nonsense. You won't get a coherent argument. You certainly won't get a moral or ethical argument, right? And so this idea that America is a white country and that is in line with the purported American values is just false, right? But that's only a persuasive argument if you actually believe the white men who created this country didn't want it to be a white country. And the fact is, and this is where they do get some of the truth right. They do get American history right. The fact is that our country was founded by white supremacists. That they are not wrong in that the imagination of the founding fathers, this was a white country. This was their country, right? That was the justification behind settler colonialism. That's the justification behind the institution of slavery. And it just continues to be the justification. And so we have to deal with that at some level. At some level, we have to be able to say, there's truth in that. That there is truth in that. And I'm not sure that we're willing to do that, right? I'm not sure that the average white person is willing to sit and engage the truth that what Charles Mills talked about in the racial contract is real. That Western ideology is truly based on white supremacy. Now, who gets to be white is another story. And that brings me to the part that I want to talk about next, which is this idea of white folks finally having enough, being fed up, and putting their foot down and uniting. That is so much damn nonsense, right? Except for because not all white folks are doing that. That's just objectively false. But lots of people are, right? It's worth the question. It's worth questioning then, what are we uniting about and what does it mean to be white? So, Lily, I wanna ask you, where is your ancestry? What is your ethnicity? Because if it's not Anglo-Saxon, there was a point in this country's formation where your people weren't considered white. The idea of whiteness is a made-up social construct. It's a social political alliance that only exists. Its only purpose is to divide people. It's to divide people. And so whenever you see people talking about uniting white people, and they're using that language around whiteness and white people, they are uniting around an idea that's divisive, an idea that's hateful. And you can see that in what she's saying, right? She says, spread a little hate. She says, this brown man, he has an accent, he has this. He's not worthy of human dignity, of human respect. Give money to Shiloh and spread some hate to him. This is what this is. This is whiteness in action. This is whiteness in action. And we have to be able to understand that so that we can take action to disrupt it, right? And I think a lot of white folks right now are seeing that, and they might be thinking to themselves, like, I had no idea that this was so popular, that this rhetoric was so popular. Well, it is. And it's getting more popular because Trump is blasting it from the bully pulpit of the presidency, but also, and this is something I want to talk about, our anti-racism doesn't make space for white folks to heal from the wound of whiteness, right? It accepts we are white, we are privileged, we do that, and again, we are in white supremacy. It is advantageous to be considered white, right? It is easier to maneuver American society. There are privileges within American society that benefit white folks. And to be considered white, to be a part of that club, is not a net gain for us. It results in this type of degradation of humanity. It results in disease. It results in disconnect. It results in sickness. It results in violence. It results in the destruction of communities. All the things that we are currently living through, it results in the perpetuation of hatred. Just listen to a Trump speech. Listen to his supporters talk. There's no love there. There's no unity there. It's all based on hoarding of power and a social order, right? And so when Shiloh Hendrix is saying this is, or when Lily Gaddis is saying Shiloh Hendrix is an example of white folks putting their foot down and saying enough is enough, it is imperative that those of us who move in the world as white, who do not subscribe to that, make our voices incredibly loud, that we are on the front lines and saying absolutely not. And then we take seriously creating community and creating an understanding of ourselves and who we are outside of whiteness, while taking responsibility for being white within this society. Okay. That's not an easy thing. I'm not suggesting it's an easy thing, but I am saying that is something that we need to do if we're going to take seriously a world free from racism and moving closer to racial justice. All right. And there is still another thing that I want to talk about with this case. This Shiloh Hendrix situation is the gift that keeps on giving, y'all. So this has blown up, and they were on there was a panel on Piers Morgan, right? And it was folks talking about the give send goes of Shiloh Hendrix and Karmelo Anthony. Karmelo Anthony, remind you, I've talked about him and his case on this show. Karmelo Anthony is the 17-year-old that has been arrested and charged with murder of Austin Metcalf outside Dallas. Okay. And there were two 17-year-olds who got into an altercation. Not sure exactly what happened. Those details haven't really come out yet. And it resulted tragically in the death of Austin Metcalf. Karmelo Anthony was arrested. He said he did it. He is claiming self-defense, right? And so he has a give, send, go as well that has raised over $600,000. We know that there was some lies about where that money was coming from, where it was going. But importantly, that money was not saying, hey, good job killing Austin Metcalf. That money was going saying, we believe you that it was self-defense, and we want to make sure that you can prove that in a court of law. Right? There wasn't any like avoid consequences, avoid accountability. We think that what you did was right. That is entirely juxtaposed to this situation where, one, this is a 5-year-old boy. This is a 5-year-old boy, right? Not the same. That's not the same as two 17-year-olds arguing. But more than that, Shiloh Hendrix is not saying I didn't do anything abusive, or I didn't do what they're saying I did. She is saying I did that, and that little boy deserved that because that's how he was acting. That's not my opinion. That is literally what that woman is saying. So when you're giving to that campaign, you are saying, hey, I agree with that. I don't think that there was anything wrong with what Shiloh Hendrix did to a 5-year-old child. Those two things are absolutely not the same. Austin Metcalf's death, tragic. I cannot imagine what his family is going through. I know he has siblings. We talked a couple weeks ago on this show about Jeff Metcalf refusing the Protect White Americans rhetoric at their protest. And so it is super, super important that we understand the framing from folks like Lily Gaddis and some of these other white nationalists, that these two things are the same, that it's a race war, that like anti-white racism is fueling Karmelo Anthony's give, send, go, and therefore anti-black racism needs to be fueling Shiloh Hendrix's, is absolutely a non-starter. It has to be a non-starter. Those two things are not the same. And it's despicable to try to make them the same. It's intellectually dishonest to try to make them the same. And it's weak as hell. It's straight up weak as hell. It has to be a non-starter for us. Has to be a non-starter for us if we are interested in justice at all, if we're interested in unity at all. And I want to be clear that these folks are absolutely not interested in unity at all. Okay? What they are interested in is what Lily Gaddis says in this clip from the Piers Morgan show. Okay? And so Piers Morgan has Lily Gaddis, has what's this other dude's name? He's the Sudanese dude who pretends he's a black man. Why am I spacing on this? Myron Gaines. Myron Gaines on there. Mark Lamont Hill's on there. And then what's her name? The other Ricky Schlott, who's a New York Post columnist. Now, mind you, look at a New York Post columnist is not really is not a counterbalance really. But I want to play this as well because this is where they're at, right? They're saying, no, this is no longer even about Shiloh Hendrix, right? They say they're trying to make it the same thing, and they're removing even her. So let me play this, and you could judge for yourself. where we are at.
Are you?
Some would say I am. I guess according to the ADL, I'm a white supremacist. I'm a neo-Nazi.
Yeah. Well, if you use the N word repeatedly, you are a racist, then, are you?
Sure, I'll embrace that. If that means forwarding, helping white people achieve freedom of speech, real freedom of speech, which, by the way, Shiloh Hendrix is being attacked on all fronts. They're trying to bring legal charges against her. They're trying to get her children taken away. So you were saying Karmelo Anthony, it doesn't matter. That's a different.
Sorry, but just to be
thing.
clear, you just said to me you use the N word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate to use the N word? When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Like it,
correct.
Well, do you understand that makes you a despicable human being?
I guess so. I don't really care. I mean, why are we not talking about Shiloh Hendrix? Why are we talking about?
Well, actually, I think you've moved it on in this debate very quickly to your own racism, which explains why you've supported her in public and why you've got all these views. You see no problem with a woman shrieking the N-word repeatedly because you yourself are a despicable racist, and you've just proudly admitted that with a smug grin on your face, which is pretty horrifying, actually, for most people to have to watch. And shame on you. You're entitled to do it, and I'm entitled to call you despicable.
Well, shame on white people for allowing themselves to be systematically discriminated against in the United States. This is our country. This is a country that should be.
What do you mean your country?
Because I'm white. And
all right, y'all. We enough with this nonsense from her, right? We've heard that. We know what it is. You heard her say that what she was about to say earlier. But it's important, right? They are trying to use this as a way to galvanize. And it's important that we are aware and have an analysis of what they're galvanizing around so that we can move differently. And it's really, really important that we move differently. So this is something we're gonna be talking about. Before we move on to our next story, want to shout out the folks on Instagram. Thank y'all for being here. I hope that this is working, running smoothly. I'm seeing some people that maybe it's not. Let me know in the comments. If you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments where you're at. Make sure you like this, share it, all that. Jump in. Let me know how you're feeling, what you're thinking about. Please like and share, invite people. All right, y'all. Let's move on to another story that's been all over the news, all over the feed in the last couple days, and that is just a heartbreaking story, really. For a few reasons. One, because I remember when this happened in 2023 and just how brutal it was. And then also, though, because as somebody who doesn't believe in prisons, as a prison abolitionist, it's always hard to see a system that you don't even think can facilitate justice absolutely refuse to even try to. That's heartbreaking. I can't imagine what he's a father, he's a son, he's a partner, a husband. I can't imagine what Tyree Nichols' family is feeling right now in these moments, right? But so let's talk about what happened. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, a jury acquitted 3 of the police officers who were involved in beating Tyree Nichols to death in 2023. Y'all remember this? This was in Memphis. It was a traffic stop and was caught on tape. And man, it was brutal. It was brutal, right? To be acquitted of participation of all charges, they didn't even find them guilty of any other ones, any of the lesser charges. There was absolutely no consequences from our system regarding this death. And that should be dumbfounding to folks. That should be absolutely dumbfounding to folks. But a lot of folks are pointing to it and saying, see, this isn't about race. And they're pointing to that because the cops were black and Tyree Nichols is black. And they're saying, see, this is not about race. And to that, I say, hold on, y'all, pump your brakes. Because it most certainly is. It most certainly is. For 2 reasons that I want to talk about. And the first is pretty straightforward. And so I want to start with that. One, this jury was not from Memphis. This jury was from the Chattanooga area. And the judge ordered that to guarantee a fair trial and all that. They are all white. This was an all-white jury. Okay. And that's important to keep in mind because white folks are more likely to perpetuate whiteness, to make sense of the world through a whiteness frame, to accept that without any critical thought than other folks are, right? We're encouraged, we're incentivized to do that. But we're not the only ones, right? And so it's important to note that 12 white people thought that the brutal beating to death of a black man didn't warrant any consequences. That's an important thing to take note of and to track. Absolutely an important thing to take note of and to track. The other way that this is connected to race is because we have to understand, again, now remember, awareness, analysis, action, and accountability. So let's be aware that policing starts from perhaps the most explicit enforcement of white supremacy that you could think of, and that is the enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act. That is to say, the enforcement of the institution of slavery. They were paying European folks, white folks, Irish folks, Italian folks, those ones that were, all right, maybe we're white, maybe we're not. Let's see if they can get with it. Those were the people that became the first police force, and they were the ones that were enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act, the returning of enslaved Africans who had escaped bondage back to the plantations where they were enslaved in, right? And so just right there, policing in and of it, the act of policing is racialized. It's racially coded. But you might be inclined to be like, Ryan, that was so long ago. Slavery's over, all that. Cool. Well, then let's also be aware and deepen our analysis of what's happening. And let's be aware and acknowledge that race and whiteness and its creation was constructed to limit access to the mainstream economy and guarantee wealth accumulation for a very small fragment of the population. White, wealthy men, landowning men, right? That's why the definition of white has been very narrow. It's expanded in order to keep the social order intact. But it expands reluctantly, and it vets the people that it includes in it. Absolutely, right? And so if we understand that, then we understand that the police have always been more aligned with the interests and the well-being of elite property owners and indeed of property itself. Remember, enslaved Africans were considered property by enslavers, by those despicable, socially deranged, morally bankrupt white folks who were owning other human beings. They were considered property. The role of the police has always been to protect property, to protect economic assets. That is not different today. That is 100% not different today. I implore anybody to show me where have the police, for example, arrested a CEO who's turned a blind eye to working conditions that result in death. Hasn't happened. Where have the police stepped in and demanded that a slumlord do what's right by their tenants? I won't hold my breath for that one either. Okay, those things just don't happen, right? And those are independent of individuals within the police force motivation or what they believe they're doing. This is systemic. The role of the police is that, right? And so whiteness doesn't care who enforces that social order. It absolutely does not care who enforces it. And so the fact that black men enforce the social order and were the leading edge of taking the life of another person and entering into a system where that life does not matter doesn't matter to the system. As a matter of fact, the whiteness loves that because now we're having this conversation. Because now we're having a conversation about, does race matter here? When the entire institution is predicated on the protection of whiteness and the wealth and the access to material resources that whiteness offers. That is why this is 100% about race. This is 100% about whiteness. The fact that 12 white people saw 3 black men enforce the most vicious manifestations of white supremacy by beating another black man to death, and they did not care about the life of that black man, lets you know that this is about race. It also lets you know everything you need to know about whiteness and the ways that whiteness erodes our humanity, erodes our moral compass, and results in degradation and in nonsense like Lily Gaddis, right? And the Trump administration and all these goofballs, Matt Walsh, who running around, all this. It's nonsense. It should be a non-starter for all of us, right? And I say that because not necessarily reluctantly, but holding tension, because the reality is this system is incapable of producing the things that Tyree Nichols' family or that Tyree Nichols himself deserved. If we really cared about these things, we would go look at what is behind all of behind the violence and the hatred and the rage that those cops had to have felt. What is behind why we're policing in the way that we're policing? What is behind the disparities and the just deplorable living conditions that so many of our countrymen, we care about our citizens. Supposedly these people care about Americans. They're Americans and we don't care about them. We don't care about poor people. We don't care about that. If we really did, if we wanted to stop this type of violence, we would look at the harm that causes this type of violence and we would work there. But we don't. The criminal justice system isn't concerned with that. It isn't concerned with repair. It isn't concerned with restoring a just social order. It is concerned with maintaining itself, maintaining the social order, hoarding of resources, hoarding of wealth, hoarding of opportunities, and the exploitation of everybody else. Okay. And no other story illustrates this more clearly than Rodney Hinton Jr. Now, Rodney Hinton Jr. is a 38-year-old man in Cincinnati. He allegedly ran over a retired deputy who was doing traffic. He ran him over and killed him the day after seeing the body cam footage of Cincinnati police shooting and killing his son, Ryan Hinton. And by all accounts, he was distraught about that and didn't know what to do. And this was his reaction. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not justifying his reaction. I do not believe that in an eye for an eye. I don't believe that. I'm also not saying that y'all should. I don't, or that you shouldn't, right? Here's why I want to talk about this today is that this is the inevitable and entirely predictable end game of our system. More Rodney Hinton Jr.'s will take place if we don't figure out how to be in community with each other, if we don't figure out how to do this thing right. And that is really what we need to work on. We need to figure out what is going on, right? Because the police somehow manage to apprehend the Dylan Roofs of the world and actually treat them with dignity, give them food, things like that. They manage that, and they can't manage to save the life of a black teenager, right? Now, I'm also not saying they said that he pointed a gun. I've seen the body cam footage. You can't really tell. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to excuse that behavior, whatever happened there. What I am saying is that, again, the root causes of this incident are not in that car. They're also not in the Hinton household. The root causes are much deeper. They're systemic and they're societal, and we all have a stake in finding out what they are and fixing them, addressing them, getting to a place where we can work at repair, work at restoration, and do something different, so that we don't see not only any more acts of violence like Rodney Hinton and that deputy. Salute, condolences to their family, but also that we don't see any more Ryan Hintons, and also that we don't see any more juries like the one that acquitted Tyree Nichols killers, and also that we don't see any more. Oh, let me get this banner right. That we don't see any more nonsense like Shiloh Hendrix. All of these things are connected, and we have to be aware of them. We have to have an analysis that sees those connections. Then we have to take action that interrupts those connections, and then we have to hold each other accountable to those values. Apparently, we all say we have values around, unity and love and acceptance and all that. Then we need to walk that talk, right? We need to walk that talk. That starts with truthful tellings of history. That starts with analysis that take in the reality of everybody involved in any given situation. And it starts with staying engaged with each other, y'all. It starts with staying engaged with each other. So that's the show tonight, y'all. That's the show tonight. Thank you for being here. Again, if you're catching this after the fact, thank you for being here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really, really means a lot. And we'll see you next week for the antidote. Peace. Go Wolves.